Hi again, Mark here from Talkingbass. This week I want to give you a simple, straightforward exercise that you've probably seen mentioned many times before. To summarise, we're going to run a major scale through 2 octaves in every key. Now, it's important to mention that this exercise has been inspired by a recent video released by someone you may have seen on this channel before, Anthony Mutharaja. Anthony is an awesome guy, a phenomenal bass player and great all-round musician who has a brilliant bass education channel here on YouTube that I would highly recommend. I interviewed Anthony for Talkingbass a couple of years ago, so I'll link to both the interview and his channel in the description below. Anthony's recent video is entitled Practice Routine Challenge and is made up of a workout in which you run the major, minor and diminished scales through 2 octaves in every key before doing the same thing with all 4 triad types. This is a great practice for any musician on any instrument, and Anthony gives a lot of extra information regarding the overall challenge, so I'll link to that video in the description below. But today on this channel I'm going to give you some tips on how to get started with that challenge. Anthony does assume quite a bit of prior knowledge regarding the actual scales and how to approach playing them, so his breakdown is more for advanced or upper tier intermediate players. So let's take a look at the opening part of the routine and run that major scale. So I'm assuming most of you know a basic C major scale. In terms of the notes, we have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, so all natural notes, and we're going to be playing over 4 strings starting at the 8th fret of the E string, so it's that C there. For the first octave, we have this shape. So that's the shape that most of you will learn when you learn a basic major scale. So 8th fret and 10th fret on the E string, then 7th, 8th and 10th frets on the A string, then the 7th, 9th and 10th frets on the D string. And for that first octave, we're starting in the finger picking with the first finger. So it's alternate picking, so 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, then fingering in the left hand, the fretting hand, we've got second finger, fourth finger, first, second and fourth, then first, third and fourth. So that basic 1 finger per fret allocation. But you know, if you've got any, small hands, very small stretch, and you find that too difficult, then you still want to use that same fingering, but you can just micro shift with the hand so that you're not having to, stretch all the time. So that's the basic first octave of the scale. So for the second octave, we're going to make a little transition here at the B at the 9th fret of the D string. So we come up. When we reach that B with that 3rd finger, we're going to shift to the 2nd finger for that 10th fret for the C, okay? So we're making that move. Okay, so the octave there of the C, we shift back to the starting finger. So we started on that 2nd finger, and we're now starting again at that 2nd finger on the C. Then we can just work up C, D, E, F, G, up to the 12th fret of the G string, and then we shift with the first finger up to the A, and we have A, B, C. And that's the whole of the 2 octaves. So 10th and 12th frets on the D string, then 9th, 10th and 12th frets on the G string, then 14th, then 16th and 17th frets on the G string. So again, same fingering as before in the first octave, 2nd, 4th finger, 1st, 2nd, 4th finger, then 1st, 3rd and 4th fingers, okay? So just learn that fingering in ascent first of all, okay? Don't worry about being in time, don't use click tracks or anything like that, just get the notes under your fingers, just out of time, however you want to play that, and just get used to that switch there at the 9th to 10th fret, and then the 12th to the 14th fret with the 4th to the 1st finger. And if you have any problems with those transitions, with those position shifts, then isolate the move. Take that 3rd finger at the 9th fret there on the D string, and then the switch to the 2nd finger at the 10th. Just that move. Just, get that under your fingers. Same again up here. You want as seamless a shift as you can get. So okay, it wants to sound in the same way that it does when you're not making the shift. Then the one up on the G string is probably going to be the tougher of the 2. there's that shift. So that's the major scale in ascent. So now let's descend. Now we could obviously use the exact same frets and fingering that we used in the ascent, which would look like this. But for this exercise, I'm going to use a different fingering. Now, there are actually many different ways to fret and finger this line, and it's always worth trying out different approaches. This pattern is going to stick around in that upper octave for a while and make for a more gradual descent. This is going to help with both small and large position shifts. We're going to have to focus on the finger picking as it shifts across strings, and we're going to be working outside of that common box shape that you'll be all way too familiar with. So in terms of that pattern, we start back up at that C, 17th fret of the G string, and we come down C, B, A, so 17th, 16th, 14th frets. Then continue down in that upper octave. We've got G, F, and E, so that's 17th, 15th, and 14th frets. And then we're going to move down to the D at the 12th fret of the D string. So that's one small position shift. So that's going to be using the first finger. So we've got fourth finger, third finger, first finger, then fourth finger, second finger, first finger, and use the first finger to shift down to the D. So it's just the next shape, let's say, below our starting position there. So then we can continue C, B, and A, so that's the 15th, 14th, and 12th frets with the 4th, 3rd, and 1st fingers. And then we're going to make a large position shift down into our original starting position, down to the G, F, E, D, C. So 10th, 8th, 7th fret A string, then 10th, 8th fret on the E string. Okay, so it's just a different set of frets and fingering to the ascent, but we get to stay up here for a little longer, and it's just a more gradual descent. Okay. Now, in terms of the finger picking, when we ascended, we finished with the first finger of the picking hand, so we're on the index finger. And remember, we're alternate picking all the way through. So when we descend, we have 1, 2, 1, and then we're on the second finger for the transition, which might feel a little bit strange to some of you. Okay, so 2, 1, 2, 1, and then again when we shift to the A string, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, and then 2 again. So on each string, as we come back down, we're going to be on the second finger. So it's good practice for coming back down onto that longer finger. Now, obviously, you could use raking as well, but for this exercise, I'm just going to stick to alternate picking just to get into that, just to get some practice at coming back down on that second finger. So that's the major scale in 2 basic octaves. You need to start very slowly, paying special attention to those position shifts and the finger picking. Aim for fluidity and a seamless transition between the positions. It's not always going to work out perfectly, but aim for as seamless as possible. And if you feel that a particular shift is giving you problems, isolate the move. Okay, now let's work through the keys. And to do this, we're going to work through the cycle of fourths. Now, I've covered the cycle at length in many other videos, but as a quick primer, the cycle of fourths is simply a sequence of notes working in perfect fourth intervals. So if we start on a C, we work up a perfect fourth to an F, then another perfect fourth to a B flat, and then to an E flat, and then an A flat, and so on. So when we do that, the whole sequence, starting at C, is C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B, E, A, D, G. Now, that might sound like a bit of a mouthful and could seem hard to memorize if you're not used to fourths. So the way I quickly teach this is by splitting it into 3 parts. First, we have C, F. So for that, just think cycle of fourths. So C and F. C for cycle, F for fourths. Then we have the word bead, like a bead of sweat, and randomly the letter G. So we've got bead G. And that's all you've got to remember, okay? Bead G. Then it's just flats the first time and natural the second time. So we have bead G as flats, which is B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, and G flat. So we're just spelling that out. And then bead G without flats as naturals, B, E, A, D, G, okay? And that's it. That's the whole thing. So remember, cycle of fourths. So C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B, E, A, D, G. Okay, now let's run that major scale through the cycle of fourths. So obviously we're going to be looking for the notes in that cycle on the E string, because we're always working across 4 strings here. So, first of all, we've got C major. Okay, so we've already covered that. And then we move to F major, and this immediately gives us some problems because we're going to be starting on the F here at the first fret of the E string. So we come up, F, G, open A string, so we've got to use the open strings here, B flat C, open D, E, F, and then we're into that second octave. So it's the same pattern, it's just that we've got to use those open strings. Then when we get to the top, we come down our alternative fingering, so obviously I played it fairly quick there, but you want to try it as slow as you need. Next we have B flat, so here's a B flat at the 6th fret of the E string. Then E flat, so where do we have an E flat? Well, here's one at the 11th fret, so. A flat. Then we have D flat, so where do we have a D flat? Here's one at the 9th fret. And lastly, for the flats, we've got G flat, which we have here at the 2nd fret, and this one's a little bit more of a stretch, so you might need to use some micro shifting here. So the position shifts there might feel a little bit trickier as well. And now we shift to the natural notes in the cycle, so we start with B, so. Okay, so that was at the 7th fret of the E string. And this leads us into E major, which is going to be a little bit different. We're going to use a different pattern here. So we're starting on the open E string. So obviously we can't drop down any further than the open string. So we've got open E, then 2nd and 4th frets there, F sharp and G sharp, then open A string, then B and C sharp, 2nd, 4th frets again. And that leads us into the D sharp and the E. So then everything is as it was in the 2nd octave. So we've reached the E there, and then we can just continue. Make that transition. And then we can come down using a similar pattern, so. And then just drop down to the B with the first finger, 2nd fret of the A string, then open A, G sharp, F sharp, and then the E. So after E major, we have A major, so 5th fret of the E string. Then D major, 10th fret. And finally, we have G major, 3rd fret. And that's the whole of the exercise. So that's the major scale played in every key. You can use that as a great warm-up or workout, and if you play through that exercise every day, you're going to improve your scale knowledge, your knowledge of the cycle of fourths, your position shifting, your finger picking, and pretty much all areas of technique. It's a very, very straightforward and ridiculously common exercise, but it's one that every decent musician is going to be able to play well. Now, obviously, Anthony Mutharaja's practice routine challenge is a little more involved than that. There are minor scales, diminished scales, and triads to also add into the mix. This is just the start, and this really is the easy bit. So check out Anthony's lesson and his channel, and I'll give you a breakdown of some more of these scales in coming weeks. Okay, that's it for today, so like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. Then check out Talkingbass for all of today's lesson material. All the sheet music and tab is over there ready for you to play along, so go check it out, and also remember to sign up for the free Talkingbass membership. There's a massive online community of over 120,000 players, all active in the forums and chat rooms. There's a ton of free lessons, downloads and courses, and much, much, much more. So sign up for free, and I'll see you next week.